Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited tonight that we are here before the community, and I'm excited because we're going to be talking about issues that affect the community. We're going to be talking about education. We're going to be talking about climate protection, and we're going to be talking about like I said before, issues that gonna affect you as a community. Welcome you, and especially those of you who are watching at home. Welcome, and like I said before, we are excited to be here. Mr. Clerk, let the record show that we are quorum to conduct business today. Roll call.
Acting Mayor Bieneme,
Yes.
Councilman Galvin,
Here.
Councilwoman Steril,
Here.
Councilwoman Case.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum to proceed.
Thank you. Now we're going to have a pledge of allegiance with Fabiola Pierre from North Miami Senior High.
Please place your right hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to have Pastor Harvey Lockhart from First Church of North Miami. That's going to do the invocation for us.
We gather this evening as a people spread throughout on a part of a wider community. We gather under God's grace and God's mercy. We gather to be one, that we might show the world around us that indeed we are truly community. Let us pray. God of grace and mercy, we give thanks for your presence with us this night. We thank you for each one who is gathered in this chamber with whatever issues they may discuss or have on their hearts. May we be willing to hear each other. May we be willing to work with each other for the betterment of this community, that it might be an example for the wider community of Dade County and the state of Florida, and indeed the nation of these United States. Bless us now and keep us, that we might shed the light that exemplify you in all of us. Amen.
Thank you. Let's go up front for special presentation.
start again, just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. But I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next
our special presentation going to continue. Sometimes we are enjoying freedom, but we forgot. It's because of those men and women in uniform. This is our way to tell them thank you. The Nobel Peace Prize, Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." We cannot forget our president, the President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, best said, "We have an obligation and a responsibility to be investing in our students and our schools. We must make sure that people who have the grades, the desire, and the will, but not the money, can still get the best education possible." We at the city of North Miami, we understand that. That's why tonight we are enjoying that presentation. And right now I invite my Deputy City Manager, Dr. Luman Claude, and Natasha Colebrook-Williams, our Chief of Staff, to come and do the special presentation for kids, for empowerment to education, special presentation, and please come forward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, North Miami stands to recognize the many ways in which we have been empowering our residents through education. I'm requesting that Mayor and Council, if you want to come in front of the podium at this time. It is our profound pleasure to highlight the City of North Miami investment in education. To the leadership and support of our Mayor and Council, North Miami has taken aggressive measures to empower people through education. This investment serves as a benefit to individuals, families, and North Miami community at large.
In 2012, the North Miami Educational Foundation was established as a nonprofit organization. Thank you. A nonprofit organization through which scholarships are made available to support high school graduates in pursuit of their post-secondary education. The creation of the foundation was supported by a resolution adopted by the Mayor and Council in 2011.
The North Miami Educational Foundation mission is driven by a board of directors. They are a proven commitment to the advancement of North Miami, including the principal of our middle school used to be Mr. Alberto Iber. We have a new principal now. And the principal of our North Miami Senior High School, Michael Lewis, whose change has been promoted as well. The President Lauren Chant of Johnson & Wales University. Developer Michael Swedlow, who's represented by Mr. Herb Tillman. Executive Director of Haitian Women of Miami, Marlene Bastien, owner of Museum Plaza, Clark Reynolds, and owner of the Randy Restaurant, Jeff Modezia.
Since its creation, the foundation has partnered with the city to facilitate a donation of $10,000 to FIU First Generation Scholarship Fund. Through a shared vision to support the educational endeavors of North Miami residents, a partnership was advanced between FIU and the city through the First Generation Scholarship Program. The program was established by the state of Florida in 2006 and is the only one of its kind that matched private donations 100%. Awards are based on need assessment after other scholarships and grants aid are applied.
To take advantage of this program, recipients must be the first generation in the family to attend college, a Florida resident, be accepted as a full-time degree-seeking student at FIU, and be enrolled for a minimum of 6 credit hours per semester. And most importantly, when completing the free application for student aid, applicants must indicate that they are a first-generation student.
North Miami has indeed created a unique four-way relationship between local government, the private sector, FIU, and the state of Florida, a relationship that is being imitated by other municipalities. Similar to previous years, North Miami contribute a donation in the amount of $10,000, and through this program, the initial donation has grown to $20,000, changing the lives of at least 20 North Miami students. At this time, I invite Dan Solomon, Development Officer for the Vice Provost's Office of FIU, to come to the front along with some of the first-generation scholars that are present with us today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure for me to represent President Mark B. Rosenberg and Vice Provost Stephen V. Mall of the Biscayne Bay campus. And I'm so happy to introduce, I know that there are 2 of our scholars here of the 20, Rose Michelle Grandpierre. Paulina Beatriz de Santiago. And do I have any other representatives or students from FIU? Yes, come forward. Can you tell me your name? Sergio. Okay, I have your, it's on I'll get it for you. Just go ahead. Sergio Fuentes. I'll get yours. Congratulations, our students. And thank you to the City of North Miami.
Stand for the photograph. Continuing with the theme, Empowerment Through Education, the city entered into a partnership with Miami-Dade College Tech Stack in Children to promote the goal of overcoming the gloomy high school graduation rates and to increase college enrollment opportunity for students living in the city of North Miami. As a result of this collaboration, annually the city sponsors a $10,000 scholarship through Miami-Dade College Tech Stack in Children, which include operational funding for a selected student who has demonstrated a commitment to education. The recipient of this year's scholarship, North Miami Tech Stack in Children Scholar, is Anise Dudu, a student of North Miami Middle School. At this time, I'm inviting the past recipient and the executive director of Textac and Children, and Marlene Lawson, who introduced the program here in North Miami, to join the council for a photograph opportunity.
Besides the First Generation Scholars and Take Stock in Children program, North Miami has several other initiatives that demonstrate empowerment through education. In 2012, the North Miami Police Department established a Fallen Heroes Scholarship in honor of North Miami officers that were killed in the line of duty. The recipient of this scholarship must be a college-bound high school senior attending school within the city of North Miami with the intent of majoring in law enforcement or criminal justice. The 2014 recipient of a scholarship in the amount of $3,500 is Jeremiah Traversier, a junior police cadet sergeant. I invite Jeremiah to the front along with any other representatives from the police department.
Additionally, the city of North Miami hosts the North Miami Mentor Program in collaboration with communities in schools and North Miami Middle School. The program was established in 1994 by the former Councilwoman Janet Carr and North Miami Middle Administrator Jesse Collins. It offers adult role models to middle school students through positive interaction. Each year, at the conclusion of the program, a mentee is selected to receive the Bill Valentine Mentee of the Year Award, sponsored by the Youth Opportunity Board. This year, recipient is Darlene Cajus for her dedication to the program. We also want to acknowledge our partnership with communities in schools. And at this time, I'm inviting the principal of the middle school, anyone who's here from communities in schools, and the Youth Opportunity Board to come forward for a photograph opportunity.
There are several other There are several other scholarship programs implemented by the city to support personal development of our residents, including funding for residents attending North Miami Adult Education Center. Through the vision of the council and the support of administration, we have provided a platform for our residents to not only empower themselves, but contribute to our community. North Miami is truly empowering its residents through the investment of education. That concludes our presentation.
You miss item number 5. You missed number 5. No, the hurricane first and then the conference. And so the middle school principal that I met.
We're going to continue with our presentation, and you all know that hurricane season is around us. It's going to be the Mr. What is that? Who's going to present? What's his name? No, we're going to do the... For the projection for the hurricane season, we're going to call Mr. Robert Moleda, a meteorologist from National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, for a presentation about the hurricane projection. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. As we know, June is the start of hurricane season, another hurricane season here in South Florida, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to give any specific forecasts for North Miami or anywhere in South Florida, but definitely it's always a good time to remind people of really what we should be doing this hurricane season, just like we do every hurricane season here in our part of the world. What you see here on the screen, that's the forecast or the outlook from the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, for this hurricane season. And I want to emphasize, when you look at these numbers don't reflect or are not supposed to indicate any level of activity locally. This is a general forecast for the entire Atlantic Ocean. In other words, the top numbers, the 8 to 13, that's the expected total number of storms that we expect to develop between June and November in the entire Atlantic Ocean. That's a very large area. So this doesn't mean that any of those storms or all those storms are going to affect us here in South Florida. It just means that that's the level of activity that's most likely to occur based on current indications and what's going on right now in the atmosphere and in the oceans. One of the conditions that we look at is the El Nino pattern. I'm sure we've all heard that El Nino over the last few months, and simply what that is it's a warming of the waters off the coast of South America on the Pacific side. So in other words, it's not even something that occurs that starts in the Atlantic, but what it does, it changes or affects weather patterns worldwide. And one of the influences of El Nino is to reduce the number of storms in the Atlantic Ocean. It doesn't eliminate them, but it tends to reduce the total number of storms that can form due to more hostile conditions, or in other words, conditions that are not conducive for storms to form. However, just because that's the case doesn't mean that we should breathe a sigh of relief, because we've seen other slow seasons before. Like, for example, 1992, we had a total of 7 storms that entire year. Now, when you take into account that the average is 12 in one year, 7 is certainly a low number. But unfortunately, one of those 7 was Hurricane Andrew. And I think those of us that were here 22 years ago remember that very well, remember it all too well. So we can't let our guard down, even if it does end up being, as the projections are calling for, a below normal season. Because really what we need to remember is our history. We need to remember that we live in an area that has been hit often in the past by hurricanes. It's been a while. It's been almost 9 years since our last hit by a hurricane. but history shows us that we will get hit again. So we need to be ready, whether it'll be this year or next year or 5 years from now. We can't answer that question at this point in time, but we do definitely need to be ready. And I think that's, by doing so, we will be helping not only ourselves, but helping our community. One of the things that I always like to remind people is that tropical storms and hurricanes, whether they have hurricane force winds or whether they're tropical storm force winds, it's not just about the wind. These storms bring many different hazards. They bring rain, which produce flooding. We all know that even a very heavy summer thunderstorm here can produce flooding. Imagine what a tropical storm or hurricane can do. They produce storm surge, which is the rise in the ocean levels that can produce significant or severe flooding, and also even some tornadoes in the outer rain bands of these storms. Now, one thing that we always have to be mindful here living in a coastal community is the threat of storm surge. And it's something that we're really not all that familiar with over the last really 30, 40 years, because this area, the northern part of Miami-Dade County, has not really seen a significant storm surge in a very long time. And it's a rise in the ocean level that brought on by the hurricane force winds. As that storm makes landfall, that water level, or that increase in the tide, if you will, has nowhere to go but inland. And in a community that's right next to Biscayne Bay, like we are here in North Miami, we certainly are vulnerable to storm surge if a storm comes from a particular direction and is strong enough to produce that amount of flooding. We go back in history again. We go back to 1926. We had a pretty severe storm surge across large parts of the city of Miami at that time. You can see on the screen there we had estimates of as much as 11 feet of tide. That's above, 11 feet above normal. I mean, normal is about maybe 2 or 3. So you can imagine how high that water must have been. And indeed, it caused a lot of damage and a lot of destruction in an area that back then really didn't have a lot of people. Now, nowadays, we know how much more populated we are here in South Florida. And that's why it's so important to know our evacuation zones, or what the county calls the storm surge planning zones. And I know this map's a little bit hard to read just at first glance, but it does show the city of North Miami is in a few of those zones, especially the area east of Biscayne Boulevard is in Zone A, where the zone that's closest to the bay. In other words, it's more prone to flooding, even from, like a Category 1 storm. Now, the farther inland you get, it takes a higher category or a stronger storm to produce flooding. But still, most of the city is in some evacuation zone. So I certainly invite folks and residents to, first of all, know if you live in one of these evacuation zones, and if so, which one. You can go to miamidade.gov, the county website, and this map that you see here is on that website. And they even have like a locator where you can enter in your address, and it'll tell you what zone, if you are in a zone, which one you're in. And our agency, NOAA, the National Hurricane Center, and National Weather Service, will be producing in real time if we get in a situation where we have a threat from a storm and from a storm surge. We'll be producing maps that will show what the potential flooding or inundation is. We hope we don't have to see this here in South Florida this year, but if we get into that situation, we will be providing additional information that we haven't done before that will hopefully help people understand what the threat is from storm surge, and hopefully help people make that right decision. Decision to evacuate if they have to, if they're told to, and because storm surge, historically speaking, worldwide, causes the most number of deaths, and we certainly don't want something like that happening here in our part of the state. These two websites here are good resources, or excellent resources for weather information, not just during hurricane season, but really year-round. But definitely now in hurricane season, weather.gov/Miami is the local Weather Service office website. And, of course, hurricanes.gov, that's the National Hurricane Center website. Both part of the same organization. We're both in the same building down by FIU. And when a storm is threatening, those two websites are going to have good information that are hopefully going to help people make good decisions and understand what the threat is from a particular storm. So really, being hurricane smart is about knowing our area, knowing our vulnerabilities to these tropical systems that do sometimes affect us. And it's always important to stay abreast of official hurricane information. That means information coming from local media, from local city officials, county officials, and also from the National Weather Service. Any evacuation orders that are issued by local officials, of course, need to be heeded because they are there to protect you. They're there to protect us from that storm surge threat. It's very important to be prepared, obviously, and to have a personal hurricane plan. That's one of the main components of being prepared. There are many websites, but two that you can go to for good information on developing a plan, if you don't already have one, are ready.gov and FEMA.gov. And I want to finish off with something important. I don't know, a lot of people don't realize a lot of the things that kind of go on behind the scenes when there's a storm threatening. People think that, the National Weather Service, we're just in one building, or some holed away in some bunker, and we don't talk or communicate with the outside world. But the fact is that we do a lot of communication as the event progresses, not only with with our meteorologists, with our media, but also with local city and county officials, because it's really important to get that word out early so that the community can get prepared ahead of time. These systems require a lot of time to get ready. So really sometimes even 3, 4, 5 days before, we're communicating regularly with local and county officials to inform of the threat, to inform of what the possibilities are of being impacted. And then as the storm gets closer, we start increasing that amount of, the amount of communication and collaboration with our local officials and at the county. So, I want people to be rest assured that the National Weather Service and NOAA is part of the community as well, and we work hard to make sure that the information is going out responsibly and as accurately as possible so that we can all make the correct decisions. And with that, I thank you very much, and good luck this hurricane season.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? No. Any question from the audience about the presentation? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we're going to have our last presentation. It's the annual audit report and comprehensive annual financial report. And we're going to call Mr. Harvey Covington and Thomas, LLC.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Camelia Colin-Sigino. I'm the finance director. Both state law and city charter require that the city issue annually a report on its financial position and activities, and that an independent firm of certified public accountants audit this report. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce Mr. Roderick Harvey of Harvey, Covington & Thomas, who will outline in their presentation the results of our annual audit and of key highlights of our CAFR.
Thank you so much. Mayor, council, manager, attorney, Roderick Harvey, partner with Harvey, Covington & Thomas, which is the audit firm of record. We will spend a little time today. Some of our items that we will hit will be the independent audit opinion, a financial summary. We will also go through a comparison. Where did we end up as of 9/30/13 as compared to where did we end up at 9/30/12? And then finally, we will conclude with our management letter comments. Those are the items that as the audit firm, we feel are important enough to put in our document as a written finding. Based on our audit procedures, we expect to issue an unqualified opinion. An unqualified opinion means that all financial statement areas and items are fairly presented in the CAFR report, which will be as of September 30, 2013. Now for a quick overview or analysis. When you look at the general fund for the city as of September 30, 2013, total fund balance, $18.7 million. Unassigned fund balance, 6.5. Total governmental funds, total fund balance, 39.3. And proprietary funds, total net position, 62.6 million. As we continue to go further into the numbers, looking at now our revenues, expenditures, how did we have the money come in as compared to how do we expend those funds. When you look at the general fund, revenues equal 48.8 million, expenditures for the same period 48.7, which gives an increase in the general fund balance of 2.2 million, which includes other financial sources and special items. Looking at all governmental funds, total revenue 55.5, total expenses or expenditures 62.2, which gives a negative increase or decrease in fund balance, including other sources, of 2.6 million. Now looking at our proprietary funds or our business type funds, operating revenue 30.9, non-operating revenues only 119,000, total operating expenses 23.9, which leaves a positive change in position of 2.9 million for the period ended September 30, 13. Now we're going to do a comparison of, once again, the 2012 period as compared to the 2013 period. So you look at, for our fund balance under governmental funds, at the end of 2013, we're at 39.3, as compared to the same period, 2012, 44.5. Revenue comparison, 2013, 55.5, as compared to 2012 period, 72.6. Expenditure comparison, in the year 2013, 62.2, as compared to the 2012 period of 65.6. Proprietary funds, our net position comparison for the 13 period, 62.6, as compared to 59.7 for the same period ended 2012. Operating income in our proprietary funds for 13, 6.9 million, as compared to our 12 period, 1.1 million. At this time, we are going to go over our management letter comments. Please note that as your auditors, we must update you on our prior year findings. So these were findings, or are findings, that we have had in prior years, and then we are required to update or to see if those items have been implemented. So our first item relates to a 2-year repeat comment. This item was on in 11 and then again on in 12. Certain accounts receivable and current liability schedules were not made available in a timely manner. Additionally, those schedules which were submitted subsequently required change. We recommend the city determine the appropriate level of financial, staffing, resources, and software application training required to support compliance requirements and financial reporting. The city needs to ensure adequate level of staffing to prepare schedules. Management's response: schedules were prepared during the closing process to support all material balances supported on our balance sheet. The mere fact that some schedules needed additional explanation or rework from a different perspective was warranted, considering the newness of the system and the time constraints and the number of staff, which is not indicative of the quality of the information. Okay, here's another comment or a repeat comment that was actually given in 12, and so this comment is rolling forward. During our audit, we inquired with finance personnel regarding the presentation of financial statements to the City Council during the regular scheduled meetings and noted no presentation was being performed. Our recommendation: we recommend that the Finance Department implement a process to present on a monthly or quarterly basis the financial statements to City Council during the regular meetings. These reports should include key performance measures to help the council understand the financial condition of the city. Response from management: management has begun presenting actual to budget reports on a quarterly basis to the citizens and to the elected officials at the regular council meetings. Other financial reports will be prepared by the finance department and presented monthly to the city council starting at the end of 2014. However, the measurement focus that will be used to prepare monthly reports may differ from year-end audit financial statements, where the full accrual or modified basis of accounting are mandated. Our next comment relates to grant reporting. Expenditures are not being filed on the accrual basis of accounting as required under OMB Circular A133. This creates problems matching expenditures between the quarterly grant reports and the detailed ledgers and the CFA schedule. We recommend that the city report grant schedules on the accrual basis of accounting. Response from management. The measurement focus that will be used to prepare monthly reports may differ from the year-end audited financial statements where the full accrual or modified basis of accounting are mandated. Last MLC, which relates to the CRA and the city. Condition, the procedure whereby the city pays most of the project costs for the CRA and provides an invoice and the related adjustments to be made to the CRA ledger presents a control weakness. This was discussed last year, but did not result in a discrepancy or a finding. This year, there was a discrepancy that was not resolved until June of 2014. We recommend the city and the CRA prepare monthly reconciliations to avoid discrepancies. The response from management. All CRA transactions, including accounts payables, should be captured under a single accounting system.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
That last, Mr. Harvey, the last
Statement.
slide that you had up there. Can you give me a little bit more information? There was a discrepancy in the CRA budget that wasn't resolved until this month. Can you give me
additional information?
Additional information, and when this month? I mean, was that like this afternoon or a week ago? And what was the discrepancy? What's the problem there?
Very good question, Commissioner, Council Member. What we found is when you look at the CRA side singularly, they will report their expenses at one level or one amount. Let's say that amount is $2. When we go to the city side, they will have their expenses for the CRA at a different amount, let's say $5. So what we're recommending is that a true-up or a schedule be done or communication be done on a more frequent basis. We propose monthly so that the amounts that's reported in the CRA and the amounts that's reported by the city are the same.
So there was an amount that the CRA was reporting as their bottom line?
Right, amount and their expenditures that was different from what the city has.
Okay.
It really comes down to just the CRA and the city doing a more frequent true-up. And what we found is once we come in as the auditors, we will help to facilitate what's on the CRA side and what's on the city side to match up. We would like to see that happen more frequently so that whether this council gets information from the CRA side or from the city side, it is very close to accurate. There's not a continuing gap for 9 months, 12 months, 14 months.
How large was the gap?
Oh, good question. I think this year, don't quote me, I want to say it was either 1.1 or 1.3 million was the gap.
There's a
Am I correct on that? I'm not. What's the number? 101. Okay, I stand corrected. 101,000.
How much?
101,000.
So there was a $100,000 difference between what the CRA was showing as its expenditures and what the city was showing as its expenditures.
Yes.
Why would there be such a gap? I mean, who's spending the money? Is the city spending the money or is the CRA spending the money? And where's the miscommunication?
All right. The city spends the money on behalf of the CRA. So either side needs to true up so that what's on the CRA side is accurate to what's on the city side.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I without, from my standpoint, without having this PowerPoint available ahead of time to review, I'm watching it in real time and trying to make notes and ask questions. I have more questions I could ask, but I'll cede the floor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting me ask questions.
Thank you.
Okay. That actually concludes my presentation. And so if the mayor will allow, or if time allows, I am open to answering questions from the mayor and the council members.
A question about that CIA. The city is the one that wrote the checks, right? but the CRA spend the money. Bring the invoice.
That's correct.
Okay. Whose fault is that?
Say again.
Whose fault is that we cannot reconcile?
I don't think it's a matter of a fault. I want to say it's just a matter of a procedure, a matter of a process being in place so that on some interim period that the two organizations speak, that the two organizations true up. So I don't want to say either one is wrong. It's just something needs to be in place to make sure every 3 months we make sure that we're matching.
Do we have questions? Sure. Go ahead.
Did you do a separate? Here we go. Did you do a separate audit of the CRA?
Say again?
Did you prepare a separate audit of the CRA?
That's correct.
Okay. 'Cause I've yet to see a financial statement from their just a proposed budget last year. Something I was trying to get, which I have never gotten, is the balance sheet, exactly what the assets are of the CRA, what's allocated, what's unallocated, where the money is, where it's being held. Did you audit all of that information?
We did, and we issued our final report for the CRA sometime last week.
So
in an electronic version, and we delivered it, the bound versions, last Friday to the CRA.
So I'll be able to see financial statements, and it will show the allocation of where the assets are.
Yes, ma'am. You will see the balance sheet, assets, liability, net assets, and then also the income statement, which is the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance.
Would you say it's broken down fairly line by line, or is it just very general?
For me, I would say it's line by line, but I mean, it's aggregate numbers, so you're not going to see the account numbers that are grouped to come up with that aggregate number.
And we can see where our assets are, whether they're in bank
yes.
accounts or
Yes.
CDs or where they are.
Yes, you will be able to see cash in hand or cash, on or investments, or yes, you'll be able to make a determination of not only the asset balance but the classification of those assets.
Yes, I've only been here a year and I haven't been
You
able
said
to
you
get that
issued
information.
last week. Why we did not have it, Mr. A copy of the report?
I'm yet to finalize everything with the accounting firm and the finance department. That's why I did not release it.
But you said you released the report. There is no.
Can I just add a point of clarity? There are two audit reports. The audit report for the city has not been finalized and booked yet. The
You're talking
report,
about that one?
the report for the CRA
Okay.
has been finalized and booked.
Okay.
That's the report that we released last week.
Okay.
The city is still coming to a close.
No, the one I was talking to the manager. I'm talking about the CRA one.
Okay.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to that $100,000 discrepancy, since the net income of our CRA is only about $400,000, isn't that a really huge discrepancy, about 30% of our budget?
That's why we're bringing the comment forward, because it's a material item as relates to the CRA. It would not be material for the city, but for the CRA side, yes, that's a significant amount to take into balance, to
Okay.
take into account.
Thank you.
In order to put the report together, how many percent of sample that you take? 15, 20%, 100%?
Are you talking CRA side?
Both.
Normally, very good question. It depends on the classification of the item. So, for example, with a asset item, right, which is a real item, you may look at a very small sample. With a
Like
small
what?
sample, let me give you numbers, maybe 10% of the transactions. With a revenue or expenditure item, you're going to look at a higher percentage of those because you expect a lot more volume. All right, so that classification may be higher. Let me give you another percent. So, for example, in the what we call the OMB Circular A133 single audit, we are required when we select a grant to look at 50% or more of those expenditures for that grant. So the percentage of testing changes based on the type of classification.
Okay. Do you have any question? No more question? Go ahead.
Mr. Harvey, you
No.
mentioned
Yes,
that the accounts receivable, and this is something that you now have brought up 3 consecutive years, if I'm not incorrect.
That's correct.
3 consecutive years you've noted that our accounts receivable were not made available to you, the auditing firm, in a timely manner. Can you explain what that means? And then I'll have some follow-up questions that relate.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of slices to the pizza. So once we get ready to start our audit, you will say, give us all of the group numbers, $10 million. The next item you want is what is the detail that supports that. It may be 10 items that make up that 10 million. Then you want the schedules. What's in the detail? Because the detail is where we're going to test. That's where we're going to make our auditor selections. And so when you have a gap in time between getting your aggregate numbers and then getting your detailed schedule, it slows up your audit. It slows up your process. Also, is if you start to make selections based on a schedule and then the schedule changes, it also potentially changes your selection process, because you may want to get a what we call percent of coverage. So you're trying to get that 30%, 20%, 60% of coverage, and now my schedule changes, so I may have to select more items. So it just causes more time, more effort on both sides, the city side and the auditor side.
As it was explained to me by the city manager, who's not here anymore, Mr. Johnson, we had expenditures and income that weren't being tracked in real time. We ended up bringing in a team of part-time staff members to essentially account for all our accounting. They had to, I came in and watched them at work. They had to take our bank statements and go through them line by line to rectify them with what was paper-wise being shown as our expenditures and our income. There were close to 3 years now then of time we weren't in real time keeping track of those incomes and those expenditures. Is that accurate? Is my understanding accurate?
Your understanding is accurate, but I would like to add to that, if I can. What I believe you're referring to in reference to what the former manager would have said relates to our utility billing area or section.
Well,
and so we
said it was in general. I mean, we had a staff. Margaret Miller headed up a team of 3 or 4 part-time staff people who were going month by month. And Miss Miller's here. If Mr. Ghani wants to allow her to come up, that's
yeah, that
up
would
to him.
Be great.
But they were month by month justifying, rectifying what was shown. Is that what you're referencing when you say the accounts receivable were not made available in a timely manner? I mean, you would think that if they were available in a timely manner, we would show you a ledger that accounted for everything, and you'd be able to quickly see that.
And move forward.
Was that ledger presented to you?
I want to give a couple, and Ms. Steele is welcome to speak. The biggest area I know that we've had issue with is utility billing, where we had, especially last year, had to really get in and get a detailed understanding of the billings, the collections, and the journalizing of those items, and make sure that the lag, you would expect maybe a 30-day lag, that the lag was reasonable, so that at the end of the year we could report accurately the revenue and or the amounts receivable, the accounts receivable amount to come in. Accounts receivable from an auditor standpoint covers various areas. You'll have general fund accounts receivable, you have proprietary or utility billings accounts receivable. So there's various slices to the pie. But if Ms. Steele, she's here, she's close. Okay, there she goes.
What's the specific question, please?
Through the mayor and the city manager to you. What was the team of the team of part-time staff members, what were you and them working on for those months?
We were trying to bring current all of the transactions that were posted, deposited to the bank, and recorded in our general ledger.
When you first started, how not current was that information?
About 14 months.
Okay. So for at least 14 months, we weren't...
That is correct.
Okay. Are we up to speed now?
We're
Are we
dropping back again. It's a matter of staffing. We just, then there weren't sufficient staff members. There was a high turnover. You will recall that our previous finance director was in and out. The person I replaced was only there for, I think, a year. The previous persons who were there for over 20 years, had left. So there was really a void. And it really was time consuming based on the implementation of the software. That was one of the major problems. The software, we are still trying to understand how some of the transactions are processed. And some of those transactions were hitting general ledger accounts that, as accountants, we felt should not be processed through. So it was really, it boiled down to staffing the system and just a lot of transactions.
My concern about this situation was that it was never made red flag waving clear to the city council that there were issues. If we had a lag of 14 months or even 3 years where we weren't day by day and week by week keeping track of our expenses and our income, that to me is hugely concerning. I remember Vernon Paul, the former finance director, saying at one of our budget proceedings last year that we were using Biscayne Landing income to supplement our water and sewer fund when we weren't billing people. If we weren't billing people, we weren't collecting income. If we were shifting a huge, he said it was $20 million chunk of money over to the water and sewer fund to cover the difference in the meantime. That's something that everybody related to finance in this city, everybody should have been telling this city council so that we could tell our community. The fact that this was sort of all done without the council's knowledge, to me, is inexcusable, because it's scary to think that there was any lag of any month or year where we didn't know exactly what was coming in and going out. And I went back and watched your previous audit presentations, and you put it forward. It's some of the language is there, but for us up here who are not auditors or CPAs, I think you owe it to all of us to tell us a little bit more succinctly and specifically what our issues are. Okay. Financial statements. I've been hollering about this since I read it in your report about a year ago. We're still not getting financial statements on this council. 3 years in a row now you're pointing out that it's an issue. 3 years in a row, administration, I know we've got a lot of new administration, so I can't, I just use that blanket term. 3 years in a row, we are not getting financial statements up here. We must start getting them. It's not enough to just do a general overview occasionally at a council meeting. I mean, unless I'm wrong, Mr. Harvey, that's what you mean. I understood financial statements to be something specific in paper.
And I want to give a couple answers to what you said. What we recommend, or what we've gone to a couple cities and said, is that the council members should get, number one, what we call key performance indicators, which an example would be cash balance. How much cash does the city have? And it can be explained as a percent. Do we have enough as a percent to go 3 months without making a dollar? Also, how are our revenues coming in? We budgeted $100 million. We're at 9 months, so we're 75% through the year. I should be about 75 million. Well, if I'm at 50 million, that would mean that I need to do a budget amendment. It will signal that I may need to look at a budget amendment. So those are the type of things that we would like to see the council get, not only here but in our other cities, that they can start to administer the policy more succinctly to turn the curve faster.
So your report tonight says we're going to start getting them by the end of 2014. That's still 6 months off in my estimation.
No, that's September, sir.
Oh, you mean budget 2014?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, the earlier the better.
The earlier the better.
I normally am not asking for more material to read, but since I went back and read your audit report, since I learned of this part-time staff team that was brought in to basically find money. I mean, I was there.
That was just to catch up, just to keep our documentation
I know,
up
but
to date.
from a city standpoint,
I
14
understand.
months of lag time and 3 consecutive financial years, it's being pointed out, that to me is inexcusable. I mean, if somebody quits and then there's 2 months later you're still getting caught up, that's one thing, but we're talking about full years that went by. That, to me, we can't accept that. That is scary. And when I hear that we're moving Biscayne Landing revenue to cover glitch in our computer software on billing people for their utilities.
Utility billing.
I mean, that to me is huge, because if we hadn't had that Biscayne Landing revenue, and by the way, we never did a budget amendment to shift any Biscayne Landing revenue over. That right there is a huge failure in policy. But if we hadn't had that money at that moment with that computer glitch, are we bankrupt as a city? Yeah, I guess we are. So we've danced right up to the precipice, in my opinion, and it can't be something we allow to continue.
One thing I want to, second slice I want to get on the record is, as your auditor, as the partner, I make myself available to all of the mayor and council members anytime to go through the CAFR one-on-one, whether it's via phone or whether it's in person. And so if you want to schedule a time with me, I will make myself available to go through the numbers, to spend more time, to give you more than a broad brush. I think the presentation lends itself to a broad brush, but I'm willing to go the extra step to say, let's sit down, spend an hour, and talk about the audited numbers. Talk about how it relates to your budget. What should you be looking at for next year? So I do want to get that out because we don't mind spending the time to help you get there.
And I want to publicly acknowledge that you have done that with me.
Thank
You've
you.
taken all my pesky phone calls, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And can you tell me at this time how much cash do we have in bank?
I can't tell you at this time how much cash do we have in the bank because
As of 2013.
Not off the top of my head.
What about the finance?
Approximately $60 million.
About 60 million. From what you see in your audit,
yes, sir.
Are we in financial crisis?
I knew I was
Are we
going
in
to get
trouble or in some
I knew I was
ways?
going to get that question. So here is the answer. Okay, based on our audit procedures, based on the state of Florida statute that we must test to for financial emergency, we will not be issuing a report that says that the city is in a state of financial emergency. There are several metrics that we must check off and report as a part of our last auditor's report, which is the management report in accordance with the Auditor General of the state of Florida. And one of those bullet points we must state if the city is in a state of financial emergency. Now, with that caveat being said, that is as of September 30, 13, which is our obligation. And so we always tell our folks that govern the organization is that they should have a mechanism to track their progress throughout the year. So that gets back to, if you allow me 20 more seconds, the need or the requirement for monthly or quarterly reports. Because if you wait for me to come in once a year and say you're in good standings or not, in my opinion, as a professional and as your auditor, that is way too long.
Okay. That's when the report that you're giving us today is 2013.
That's correct, as of September 30.
Of
Yes, sir.
13. That's
Absolutely.
when
Yes, sir.
We don't have any reports about what's going on from October until now.
So we're already 9 months
Yeah.
into, if my mind is right, 9 months into the new year. And I'm taking you back 9 months. Where we at now? I don't have that answer.
I would like to answer first the question from Councilman Galvin, who asked specifically how it was funded, since for 6 months we did not bill the utility bill. The fact is, most municipalities actually have pool cash. So you really have one main checking account. It's a pool cash. That is, and it's very difficult to know because when the city received the revenue from Biscayne Landing, it went to the same bank account as regular collections from UB. So it's very hard. You won't really see which cash is paying for personnel.
We're not talking
it's
about
segregated.
We're not talking about you, the financing manager. We're talking about budget. That should do a budget amendment.
Right.
We're not talking about cash and
Okay,
bank
yes.
where we take the money. We're
He
talking
was
about
specific
budget
in who was financing.
No,
Okay,
he was
then
talking about
fine.
budget amendment.
And the second question was I'm answering regarding monthly financials, because we had the change in key personnel. We had the assistant finance director, the former finance director that just left less than a year, and as Ms. Miller just said, catching up with everything plus an annual audit. That really did not allow us to have time to actually be current and reporting monthly, both balance sheet or governmental funds and maybe budget to actual and revenue and changes in fund balance. We could not, because we had to give the priority to the audit that really took up all the resources that we had in-house. Now that we're done with the audit, and next Tuesday we'll have the full CAFR report published, that will be behind us. We will be able to issue monthly financials. That's all.
Can I ask a quick question regarding what I heard that you mentioned many times that you don't have enough staff. Do you guys have an opening right now ready to be filled, or you will continue to work under staff? Because if it's that so, we have a problem.
Go ahead, Nancy. Answer. That's
We
a
are-
question.
It's very difficult after the Europe and
that was just a
people change. It's
it's-
been we can't say
No,
that
no, no.
staff is very.
Maybe it's a question for the city manager. What I'm asking right now, I understand the Europe, some staff left. I'm asking that the finance department will continuously working with the staff that they have now, or do they have like a shortage of staff, or that's what it is right now? If they have like 3 or 4 staff, that's the staff that they're gonna have to operate for the rest of the year, or there is an opening.
We are evaluating the staffing not only in the finance department, but there will be additional staff in the finance department.
But from what I understand, the finance department is over budgeted. That's when they have more staff than any other departments, from what I understand. No?
Well, we have utility billing, which is part of finance, that is funded with the utility fund. That is one of the areas I think that is lacking. And we have another area which is in the accounting department and accounts receivables. Those are the areas that we are looking at.
That's been, but you understand that they are over budgeted for this year, the financing department.
Yes, I do.
And how you gonna
the main reason
fill-
for the over budgeting is for the staff that took the ERIP and members, that the payout we had on those staff that left.
But you replace all of them.
We replace some of them, not all of them.
Okay, I'm trying to address the questions and the concern that Councilman Galvin has been raised. Apparently, for the past couple of months or years, it seemed like the finance department has been operated understaffed. I heard that they were unable to reconcile the account for 14 months. Now I'm hearing that they back up again because of the report. So what I'm sensing is that it's not like they don't know what they're doing or they can't actually doing what they do, but they just don't have enough staff. So if they don't have enough staff, so how do we expect them to operate?
Well, again, as a city manager, I will have to look on.
I understand. I'm not telling you how to do it, but I just want to make sure that we understand that there is a problem. So the problem needs to be addressed. Other than that, 6 months from today, we're going to come back here blaming them for not doing the work, but yet again, we don't want to give them the tools to do the work. So as long as you're aware of it, you want to address it, and I think that you need to do so. Then from there, 6 months from today, when they come back before us, or I'm assuming like, not 6 months, we only have like 3 months.
Well, the report, the CAFE is due at the end of the month.
Yeah, but we're not talking about the audit report. We're talking about the day-to-day activities that they need staff to do in order for us not to deal with what we're dealing today. Thank you.
Finance, are you understaffed? Do you need more staff, or we fill all the key position about the finance department? We're not talking about simple employees at our utility department. We're talking about at the accounting department, financing to reconciliate
It's relative. Based on the nature of how the transactions are processed, we are understaffed. If we had a properly implemented program, it would be a breeze. To my boss's credit, we have just now implemented a CAFRA builder, which will make life a lot easier. But as it is now, especially with how utility billing is processed and we have to update, it is time consuming, it's detailed, and from that point of view, yes, we're understaffed.
From previous administration, that's been based on the EREP? Is because of the EREP?
Not so much the ERIP, it's just the process. The process is tedious, time consuming, and it needs a lot of checks and balances to make sure they're accurate.
And should I?
Councilwoman, yes.
One more. I'm sorry.
Let her answer. Go ahead.
I wanted to add also, 2 years ago, when the former finance director left, along with the chief accountant and the assistant finance director, combined, these three individuals had more than 50 years of experience dealing with the city operations. So the time that it will take for their replacement, coupled with that, you had a brand new software, very complex software that cost more than $1 million. So you have those two big elements really made it more difficult.
And Mr. Mayor, I understand that. The problem is nobody was telling us that. We're the guardians of the city. We bear ultimate responsibility to the taxpayers to make sure things are running. When there are problems, especially financially, and nobody's telling us, that's a problem. I only found out by accident that the part-time team was brought in to be doing all of this. If not for that accident and me learning through the last 6 months what's been going on, I don't think we'd still know, because the former administration didn't tell us, and that's wrong. So if there's a problem, we're all one big family. We need to share that in real time so that we're all understanding and so that we're all trusting of each other going forward. When there's a financial issues, and they're not being communicated to the council, when I was asking questions and I was getting evasive answers, when I wasn't getting information, to me, that was just a bell ringing, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to fix those things going forward.
Councilwoman.
Finance director through our mayor and to our auditor. You mentioned that when money comes in, it all goes into a pool. Is it not allocated? I do escrow counting. I bring millions of dollars into escrow accounts. Every dollar goes to a different file. Every dollar that goes back out can only come from its proper file. So you're saying that money comes in from Biscayne Landing, goes back out for water, or, I mean, every bit of revenue should be allocated to a certain pot, and it should only be spent for a certain pot. So you're telling me that we don't keep track of that?